Hey everybody, how are you doing? Welcome back to Hart Talks. As you can see from my surroundings, I'm not in my usual place at the moment. I've got a guest. I'm here in the home of George Hodson, and I've known about George for a while. He has a reputation, and he has been telling his story, and he's going to share his story with us today. So I'm going to now pass over to George, who's sitting on that side of the room, because we've been very careful. We're very careful on Hart Talks. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please welcome George.
Hello, Stephen. Well, it's very nice to meet you and to have this sort of chance to have a chatter and a natter.
A natter, yes.
See what we can come up together with and create something nice and creatively juicy and interesting.
I'm sure we'll manage, George. I'm sure we will. I heard about you earlier on in the year when I saw a video that you did with Dean Street. Now, I know you're pretty new to telling your story this publicly, aren't you? So what was it for you that made you want to, or feel that, did you feel it was necessary?
Well, it was Lee Chislett that actually asked me to come and talk to some of the trainee nurses around HIV and his staff there. And I thought, well, that feels safe because I love and adore Lee and know it would be safe. And I thought, it's time that I actually told my story and what I went through as one of the survivors, although I'm worried about the word because it means losers, but one of the long-term survivors of HIV. And I thought that this would be a first good, safe forum to tell my story safely in the hands of someone like Lee. So yeah. I went along and did that, really. So that was my first appearance.
That was your first appearance.
Yeah.
So tell us, when were you diagnosed?
I was actually officially diagnosed in '85, but I've been living in San Francisco for 2 years, where I picked the virus up. So when I came back in 1980, they were looking for blood for people who come back from America for some Hep B trials. So they had it stored, and when the test came in '85, they tested mine, so I came back positive in 1980, Stephen, a long, long time ago.
It was a while ago.
A while ago, indeed.
So how...
40 years.
Yeah. What did you think was the future?
When I was told I was positive,
yeah,
I think it was a bit like a personal tsunami. Just everything that I'd held dear was smashed. It no longer had a relevance because I was going to have to evolve a new way of somehow navigating my way through this awfulness, this plague. There was no panacea, there's no template for it. Everyone was having to do it in their own way. So I just said, one, fuck you. I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something inside of me said that I'm going to be the one that got away, because there's always one that gets away, isn't there? So I then set about reorganizing and rearranging my life to be able to find ways to develop coping strategies to survive.
And how does somebody survive through... I'm not even going to ask you to think about how many people you lost, over the years.
Too many.
Yeah, far too many. And what was your coping mechanism? How are you here today?
That's a difficult one, Stephen. It's multifaceted. It was having people around me, having a team of medical, psychological people that were looking after me, nurses, doctors, psychiatrists. It was asking and keeping informed, insisting on patient parity, that we were in this together. It was learning somehow to go beyond the losses that were just piling up, that each time you just had to breathe in, accept it, and move on for the next one. I'd spent a lot of time in Asia with my partner Sam, who was from Thailand, and I've worked there for 10 years. So I used a lot of inner resilience techniques, well-being, I've been an old hippie in San Francisco, so I developed meditation and spirulina. So I used a whole host of little things, but the main thing, Stephen, that I think I used was that I realized very early that I shouldn't be, one, afraid, or two, ashamed, or three, guilty of having a bug in my blood.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning block on which I tried to find ways to build coping strategies that kept fear at bay. And I said to myself, intellectually, you're always going to be living with this virus. It's always going to be in your system. You're never. So find ways to keep it. I call it sleeping dragon. Keep the HIV, which is sleeping dragon in you, asleep. So common sense things like eating well, everything, keeping stress, being careful about what commitments you make. And I just built up ways of keeping sleeping dragon asleep. And blessedly, it seems to have worked. So, but it would take a book and a day to really tell you how many, but there were all sorts of strategies from all sorts of places that I pulled together to navigate myself.
So you talk about being in Asia and being in San Francisco, and obviously San Francisco, you know, when we think about places that were hit big time, it was places like San Francisco and New York and then London, you know, and so many other places. But can you tell me nice memories of
how we partied,
you know,
what fun we had. It was a riot. All these wonderful men from all over the world coming together to get together to form a community. It was joyous. I had such a wonderful time. And I think it formed who I am. You know, it was the end of the Haight-Ashbury thing, but there was still that whole hippie vibe and just the sort of having power, being a majority community, not living in fear, learning how to express ourselves, taking power, communities, shops. It was one of the most formative 2 years of my life. I learned from all that a huge part of my coping strategies, I think, by having gone hippie, which I still am. You know, I still see myself as part of the hippie tribe, really.
Obviously, we're coming up to World AIDS Day in December 1st, and what is, you know, I think World AIDS Day means something to me, but I think it can be different from what it means to other people. So if I asked you that big question of what does World AIDS Day mean to you, George, you know, as somebody that's lived with the virus for 40 years and lost so many people?
It inevitably is and will be and has been a day of great sadness for me that so many of my friends and indeed my beloved partner Sam were slaughtered by this disease. I guess I just try and quietly during the day pull up images or memories of different people that I've lost along the way and say hello to them and say that I love them, that I'm still telling other people to not forget them, what beautiful people, how bravely they fought in the most terrible ways, you know, and just devote the day to that. I light a candle, I wear a red ribbon, of course, but like everything around this pandemic of AIDS, it's all beginning to fade a bit, Stephen, isn't it? You hardly ever see a red ribbon now. People don't properly understand what really World AIDS Day is about. It's a bit like Pride, isn't it? It's beginning to lose its authenticity, its energy, and becoming just, oh, let's have a World AIDS Day party, you know. But no, obviously for me it's a very special day in the year, but I survive it.
And you mentioned your partner Sam, and I think George and I were talking just before I started the video, and we were talking about how we can't forget these people, and obviously you George cannot, don't want to forget Sam. Why is it important for Sam's memory to be remembered and to be spoken about?
Firstly, because he was just the most magnificent man in body, mind, spirit, and such a huge influence on who I've become. And I don't think I probably would have survived without the opportunities and looking at things differently that he offered me. I sort of owe him such a lot, really. Such a lot.
And how many years has it been since he passed?
Oh gosh, do you know, I'm not sure, about 20.
Right. And George was showing me a big picture that he has in his house of him and Sam. And do you still see him in your memories, George? Do you still, is he still very clear?
He's absolutely vivid in my mind's eye, in my inner being. He suffuses me with his love still and empowers me to keep battling on. The Warrior Queen, he calls me, which is a rather nice title that some of my friends have given me recently. The Warrior Queen. 4 cancers, 40 years.
Exactly. So I was going to ask you about that next. It's
a tough old
it's not been an easy run, has it?
No.
You've had cancer 4 times.
I've had cancer. I've had to successfully battle cancer.
Beaten it,
4
yeah.
times. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so bowel, anal, lymphoma. Survival has been my work, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of the religious and texts talk about suffering as a way to some kind of enlightenment, and I hope that along the way the suffering that I've had to process has given me a wisdom and inner strength and inner knowledge of myself, perhaps a better empathy with the world than I had before.
And I think, obviously, thinking about my experiences, which are different from George's, but there's been things that I've gone through, and I do think, George, it, although there's part of us that thinks, gosh, that I'm not going to survive this, you have done, and you have continued to build a life for yourself, and I have to move over to that little bundle in your lap. Who is this?
This is Lockdown Lil. I made her during lockdown. And I would quickly like to tell the story because it's part of another coping strategy. When Sam died, I had that awful yawning hole to fill. And I saw a lot of my friends who were lost their lovers grab onto someone else. It was all a bit frenetic and frenzied and getting into all kinds of trouble. So I thought, I need to have something to care for rather than on myself. I need to develop what I called an absorption, something that took me away from HIV, AIDS, illness, clinics, crematorium, death, wailing, grieving. I wanted something which I could set as a project to keep my mind occupied. So I got a little Griffon dog. My mother had them as a child, so I was used to them. And she was lovely, but she got lonely, so I had her mated and she had puppies. And then I thought, this is interesting. I can start breeding them and going to dog shows and having a hobby, meeting new people and achieving something by producing these beautiful little dogs for people to have in their homes. I've bred about 100 of them now, and I've made new friends through it. And it was one of the ways that I kept myself balanced, that I had this achievement, this interest, this hobby, and this love,
And Lockdown Lil is one of...
She's my 7th generation. I bred her great-great-great-great-grandmother.
Gosh.
And a grandfather, and yeah.
And you have another 2, don't you?
I have Fluffy and Moomin who are over there. So,
and they are adorable.
It's a little family that gets me up in the morning.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I felt when I was living with AIDS was that because I wasn't working, I wasn't successful, I wasn't, I withdrew into this rather hermit, reclusive style. And quietly what I was doing, and I hope with my art, was producing beautiful things that need affirmation within myself. So it kind of ticked that box off, that it wasn't just 30 years of lying there waiting to die and, taking the salts or...
Yeah, and you mentioned your art there, and George is an artist who, as I sit here, I look around and there's pieces that George has done that are just, I love them. I really, I was just...
Thank you,
your art, was that another form of...
Yeah, you've got... So, when we were first diagnosed with AIDS, we were seen as throwawayable. We were disposable. No one wanted to really be interested in us because we were queers and, we were disposable. So I was on a retreat and I was by the seashore line. And as I was walking along, I thought, I do a walking meditation. I thought, just concentrate. And anything that catches your eye, pick it up. So I walked along the beach. And there are all these little bitsy, dreadful plastic bits and bits, but I picked them up and then I brought them home and I thought, these are a souvenir of that day. What I'll do is make a collage out of them, stick them all together in a way, and then that's making art. Mm-hmm. That's a picture. So collage, I rummage around and find things and stick them together, and that's how it helped me. And it was another absorption. It kept me away from too many Jaffa cakes.
As you say, it goes back to that thing of creating, and you've made this family of dogs, and these generations of all these dogs, and your artwork, and it's a real testament to making something out of a life that you were told that you wouldn't have.
That's really the secret for all of us, isn't it, Stephen?
Yeah.
And creativity, I'm a ball of creativity. It was how I made my fortune, how I travelled the world as a copywriter and creative director. I've always been creative. That's what I do well. That I was creative, and that to use it as a power of self and world expression. And if I don't make something in a day, I feel quite bereft, even if it's just a photo or... So creativity for me is a huge absorption coping strategy and part of how I waddle along.
Yeah, I get that, obviously, from my background as an actor and from doing YouTube. I understand that whole creativity thing so much. So, George, from watching other interviews you've done, I have a feeling that you have a naughty sense of humour. Would I be right?
I love a sense of humour. Yes, hopefully those that know me, Stephen, would say that I make them laugh, even in the most difficult of times. And I think a lot of the interviews I've done, because I've shared a lot of horror and fact, the twinkle in me has been forgotten a bit. But as I said, I just did a podcast. I came, you sound like a sad old sap, but no, I'm not a sad old sap. I'm a beautiful old queen living out their life to full.
I think that's a perfect way to end, and it's George was mentioning that podcast that he was doing, which I'll put the link for down below. It's called The Logbooks, and it's about these logbooks that were found from Switchboard, the phone line, and they are just, I think, George, for you to know that somebody listening to them like myself just didn't feel that it was a sad old queen. I just thought,
Look,
what an
I'm dancing
amazing.
with my boy,
See,
dancing.
how can you
Can
call
you sing Dancing Queen?
how can you call this a
Come
sad
on,
old queen?
Stephen, give me Dancing Queen.
This is a very happy old queen. Who's this? This is
Moomin.
Moomin.
Moomin. Give me Moomin, kitty. Dancing Queen. All right.
So George, thank
it's lovely
you.
spending time with you, Stephen. I've really enjoyed it.
You too, George. Thank you for doing this. And I just, I want to say that this World AIDS Day, give a thought out to what's happening now, but also to George's generation and the people that were lost, because they're never forgotten by people like George.
And please, younger peoples of difference, don't forget us. I make that plea to you. Learn your history, honour us, don't ever ridicule us or marginalise us, because ageophobia is something which should not be tolerated. And I fear sometimes that there might be a tinge of it out there. If there is, get rid of it. And just take care of yourselves a little more, particularly around sexual health matters. If there's one thing that can be learnt, is that sexual health is now an easy and personal responsibility to yourself and the community. And please stay safe, practice safe, right?
Thank you so much, George, and thank you for watching, everybody. I will love to hear your comments. If you have any questions for George, please put them in the comment section below, and I will get in touch with George and get them answered for you. And please like, share, comment and subscribe. Remember that World AIDS Day is December 1st. You can get red ribbons from the Terence Higgins Trust. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, George. It's been wonderful speaking to you, and thank you everybody for watching. Take care. I'll see you very soon.